English is in channel 1, Russian is in channel 2. But there's also a third language which is going to be involved. I'm honored to be welcoming you at a global event at Global Crossroads. And I think we should start by expressing our gratitude to the host country, the amazing United Arab Emirates, a country which, if I may say so, is a land of not hawks, but of able falconers. I'm also honored to be hosting today an event organized on behalf and by the Rosatom, Russia's nuclear monopoly. And we've just witnessed a marvel, a city of the future, the city of the future, rather, growing out of the deserts. All of this based on the mighty source of energy, which is, of course, the small modular reactor. And this is exactly and precisely the topic to which today's event is dedicated. But then, is it worth all the hype? Is it really the technology of the future? We'll be speaking today to various personalities from both Russian and international environments. But first and foremost, we will talk to a representative of Rosatom proper, its head, Mr. Likhachov, and its deputy director, Mr. Komarov. I will first address Mr. Likhachov. Алексей Евгеньевич, прошу вас подняться на сцену, глава Росатом, который сегодня с нами. Алексей Евгеньевич, до САМ сегодня еще доберемся, но первый вопрос будет такой. Вы в прошлом году очень смело сказали, что, в общем-то, дискуссии о будущем атомной энергетики закончились, что, в общем, все и так понятно. Вы действительно так считаете? Вы полагаете, что в 2021 году вот произошел такой качественный рывок, мы же через что-то переступили?
Спасибо большое за вопрос, уважаемый Сергей Борисович. Если позволите, я все-таки поприветствую наших участников и поблагодарю за активное участие в этой нашей атомной неделе здесь, на EXPO 2020. Всех наших гостей,
I'd like to thank all our guests, Mr. Ministers,
Всемирной ядерной
heads
ассоциации,
of the
корпорации по атомной
World Nuclear Association, the
Арабских Эмиратов,
Nuclear Energy Corporation of the
Федерации,
United
всех
Arab
гостей,
Emirates, the
кто
ambassador of the Russian
тратит свое
Federation, and all the
время
guests that are
на
spending their
изучение
valuable
крайне
time
важного
to
вопроса
study this
роли
extremely
и
important
места
question, the
атомной
role and the
энергетики в
place of
мировом
nuclear
энергобалансе.
energy in the world energy balance. Thank you very much for that. Coming back to your question, you see, yes, indeed, I said that to a certain degree last year was a watershed. It split our lives into before and after, and this is just not a figure of speech. This is not an exaggeration. And in my opinion, there are two reasons, really. First, indeed, the pandemic and the very tough situation that we live in over the last 2 years has compressed and made more acute the contradictions that we had in the world in general and in the energy system in particular. This is why the peak energy loads, the collapse of the energy prices, the pushing out in certain countries of nuclear power plants with coal, as well as other sources of generation. Unfortunately, all this has provided a negative picture, unfortunately, that in reality is in contradiction with the statements of the global community about the principles and the rules of the energy transition. The second point, dear Sergey, are facts. And you cannot argue with facts. And I don't know, maybe you as a journalist understand the true reasons better, but it is a coincidence. But by November last year, by COP26, a whole series of politically unengaged scientific and research organizations and sources published certain data. And you cannot reproach these sources for being in love with the nuclear energy or Russia. First, it was the conclusion of the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe about the real level of carbon emissions throughout the life cycle of particular types of energy. The upper border of nuclear energy is 5.5 grams per kilowatt hour, and the lower threshold of the greenest source of energy, wind power, is 6 grams. Therefore, we do not even cross this threshold as far as the carbon is concerned with any of the sources of energy that have been proclaimed green. The second thing, this is the statement of the head of the World Energy Agency, who came forward with a suggestion to increase by 5 times, and this is not a mistake, to increase the pace of the construction of nuclear power plants around the world by 5 times to substantiate with the real basis of the commitments of the countries and humanity in relation to energy transition. And the climax of all this, in my opinion, is the statement of the United Expert Institute of the European Commission. And we know about the difficulties and the difficult negotiations going on in Brussels as far as nuclear energy is concerned. And I can almost cite or quote the conclusion of that commission in the fall of last year, having worked through all the instructions from the European communities about the possibility or the lack of such to go into the green taxonomy with nuclear energy. So neither the commissions nor its experts are aware of any facts where nuclear energy would inflict harm that would be greater than the types of energy that are already in this green taxonomy. The phrase is constructed in a complicated fashion, but the essence of the phrase is clear. Even those who are not in love with nuclear energy, specialists of the European Commission, defined that nuclear energy is absolutely adequate from the point of view of its impact in comparison to the other sources of energy that are part of the green taxonomy. So, Sergey, it's all part of the common context. And I think that for the first time, and this is where the revolutionary nature lies, for the first time at COP26, neither one of the nuclear guys had to provide any excuses. No, with our colleagues, jointly with our colleagues, with the nuclear specialists from the European countries, from the countries from Central Southeast Asia, and from the United States of America. So we discussed the peculiarities and the details of which type of nuclear energy, in which volumes, in which reference power plants has to become the integral part of the green energy transition. In my opinion, this is in line with our ideology fully. We are convinced in the Russian Federation that energy transition would not be possible without the expansion of the nuclear capacity of our country. There are political decisions, there are official instructions from the president of the Russian Federation and the government to increase from the 20% to 25% of nuclear power generation up until 2040. Well, we remember the well-known truth from the Soviet times, and I think that the younger generation might not remember it, but I do remember it very well. There was a motto, if I can put it that way, that the revolution has the beginning, but the revolution has no end. And in this regard, these revolutionary decisions of the global community, of the energy leaders of the planet, have turned the discussion about the nuclear energy towards the constructive direction. And we will still need to work a lot on how, through which technological solutions and through which nuclear technologies we can restore the share of nuclear energy in the world energy balance. Well, as a journalist and as a person who was educated back in the Soviet times, who studied German, I remember that the most difficult dialect in German was Schwabish, but I guess right now the most difficult dialect is the green dialect. It's good that our presentation is in Russian and English, so I will ask you a question in Russian. You keep talking about the renaissance of nuclear energy, and I guess, yes, there is a turning point. It has happened. So how should I put it? Even right now, or only, or even laymen are now talking about these small modular reactors. Is this a revolution, or these are just small power plants? You see, from the point of view of public conscience, of course, it's part of the big revolution when a whole number of countries and here, political context is not even considered, so there is no political connotation, and we welcome the decision of Poland, the decision of the Ukraine about unfolding the construction of SMRs and small power plants, nuclear power plants. But as a representative of the Russian nuclear industry, I can say that neither us nor our colleagues have no competition in their heads between the different types of capacity. A very simple example, take the automobility, if I can put it that way, the automobile analogy. We understand that not a single economy can develop without powerful dump trucks, and we understand that any modern family cannot imagine a future without a convenient and economic sedan. Therefore, in the country that has automobile production, as a rule, produces major dump trucks and accessible, affordable, economic, in high demand with the population automobiles, passenger cars. Pretty much the same thing is happening with nuclear capacity. We're actively building and we are offering to our partners big capacity, 1,000, 1,200 megawatts blocks of these power plants, and this is a very good and sustainable generation 24/7, regardless of the weather, regardless of nature and wind. So it's basic generation of any country that becomes a member of the nuclear club. Small power plants are good in specific places at a specific time. This is where you cannot, for instance, lay the grid. This is where you cannot use other sources of energy due to the longevity of roads, due to the inability to bring large volumes of fuel. And I think this is of special importance in the regions that are environmentally fragile, such as remote northern and Arctic regions, where you don't really have networks, grids, or roads in the common understanding of these terms. And in this regard, targeted decisions, but at the same time, quite a considerable amount of capacity are in high demand and they're acceptable. For instance, the solution that we are suggesting consists of two blocks, rhythm 200, capacity output is 105, 107 megawatt, and this is the population of a 100,000 strong city. So you can provide electricity to 100,000 strong town, and this competence is in high demand. And I will agree with you that the public opinion fluctuates, and right now there is a great demand from laymen and politically to use small capacities. Our dear friends, our partners from the United Arab Emirates and from Armenia, we discussed with them today the opportunity to cooperate in this area, in the creation of small capacity power plants. And we have a number of solutions. Kurchatovsky Institute, ourselves, between 1.2 up to 6, 8, up to 50, 100, 300 megawatt. That's also considered to be small capacity in the current state of affairs. So we are ready to suggest different solutions, but saying that the technological landscape of the future only consists of small power plants, it would not be possible. They will be equal participants. They will increase their share in the general nuclear balance, but in my opinion, this will not be the only solution. For us, for Rosatom, for Russia, this is a special area. This is a special source of pride because our developments of SMRs, of small reactors, are not only used as onshore small stations, small power plants. We are the first ones and the only ones that have implemented the project of a floating NPP. The Rhythm 200 reactor is the heart of nuclear icebreakers that have been referenced for dozens of years, that have been used in the Arctic, and we're now working on Rhythm 200M reactor. This is the modernized one. The Rhythm 400 reactor that will become the heart of a new icebreaker leader. So for us, it is a very important thing that we have inherited from the founding fathers of the nuclear industry, our competence in small reactors. And I don't want to go into the details. I'm really holding myself back because we have a lot of presenters that will talk about this topic of SMRs. But the thing that I will agree with is that due to a variety of reasons, nuclear capacity is currently at the forefront of the discussions of the future technological landscape of nuclear energy, and we welcome that. But at the same time, we do not push anything out. We have things to say, we have things to invite you to, and there are things that we can learn from our partners, and this is what we're planning to do today. Thank you very much. As president of the Association Global Energy, because we give out the awards for traditional, non-traditional energy, $500,000, and you've been very respectful about them all, and you were definitely above politics, having mentioned the Polish and the Ukrainians. But as far as SMRs are concerned, this is the Russian invention, and Russia has more practical projects in this regard. So please take your seat in the hall. And I would like to invite Kirill Komarov, first deputy head of Rosatom, head of the block responsible for international business and development.
Mr. Komarov, could you possibly elaborate on what Mr. Likhachov has just said? Are we talking really viable technologies which can change the world, so to say? The floor is yours. Mr. Likhachov has just referred to some technical details. I'm sure that you will provide us with many of them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brylev. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Always a pleasure. I would like to begin my speech by thanking the very hospitable city of Dubai and EXPO 2020 for having us for the whole nuclear week. Mr. Brylev, thank you for your question. I do hope that my presentation will elaborate enough to answer it properly. As you know, small modular reactors are all the hype on the energy market today. According to International Atomic Energy Agency, in 2020 there were over 70 SMR designs under development in the whole world. And while some associate the entire nuclear renaissance with SMRs, others even believe that they will eventually substitute all the sources of energy, fossil fuels, renewables, even large-scale nuclear power. Rosatom as always preaches a professional, rational approach as not a single source of energy or a standard this source of energy is provided in as a holy grail. We in Rosatom do believe in the energy mix diversity. SMRs will not substitute something, but will naturally fit in the energy ecosystems, meeting the modern energy market needs perfectly. In the most balanced energy mix, every power source has its niche, including SMRs definitely. They are modular, which reduce the construction period. They can produce electricity suitable for hybrid applications. They have load-following capabilities to create combination with renewable technologies, especially in distributed systems. They require lower capital cost, comparing that you need just less amount of money to finish the project. They can more readily slot into brownfield sites in place of decommissioning, for example, coal-fired plants. They can build independently or as modulars as in a larger complex with capacity added incrementally as required. This list goes on, and it's a huge list. However, there are certain tasks which are almost impossible to achieve without SMRs, and today I want to shed light on three main instances where they are irreplaceable from our point of view. First, in bringing energy to remote locations. Second, in bringing long-term predictability of electricity prices, especially for large-scale industrial projects. And third, in bringing demonstrable sustainability and eco-friendliness to the production chains of the project where decarbonization is key. Let me now demonstrate how we in Rosatom bring SMR solutions to exactly where they are needed, sometimes very, very far away. You probably know that around 10% of the global population still has no access to electricity, no access. Even more have access but don't have any connection with national grid because they are located in remote and isolated areas. This is true about so many locations on Earth. Think about vast territories of Canada, Africa, both Americas. Think about the islands and archipelagos of Southeast Asia, for example, and many others. People in most distant places on Earth are facing the same list of challenges in getting stable energy supply. Our country, Russia, is no different. Our remote northern regions, abundant with mineral reserves, occupy more than 50% of the territory of a country, with approximately 20 million people living there. These regions are located in a decentralized energy supply zone, with fuel transport cost accounting for about 80% for electricity prices, and their infrastructure being way beyond just underdeveloped. What other power solution, if not a floating nuclear power plant, could ensure both reliable and clean heat and power supply for such locals and industrial development? There is simply no other solution. Understanding the challenge, we have constructed the world's first floating nuclear power plant to supply power to Russia's northernmost town of Pevek. The project is really unique. Academic Lomonosov floating nuclear power plant has 2 small modular reactors generating up to 77 megawatt of electricity altogether. It was commissioned in 2019, and the US Pair magazine named this event among the 6 key global nuclear energy industry events of 2019. We are very proud that up until now it's the only operating floating SMR NPP in the whole world. As always, we didn't spend any time celebrating and pushed forward, designing new floating power plants. Alexey Evgenievich already mentioned it today. Our new floating power plants are a perfect illustration of my second point about bringing predictability and reliability to large industrial projects. I have a very interesting case to prove it. Think about the Baimskaya ore zone in Russia. It is a mining project that has the world's largest deposit of copper and gold, which is going to be explored for minimum 40 years, maybe even with some extension of this time period. At first, it seemed that using LNG for power supply was a logical option for this project because, you know, there are a lot of gas in Arctic part of Russia, a lot of LNG projects are already located there. But have you noticed that the price of natural gas increased 10 times over the last 6 months? As a result, the cost of generating electricity from gas has grown by more than 8 times. And can you imagine how many risks would the mining project owner have during the 40 years of the project exploration, based on electricity which goes from gas? For projects like Baimskaya, the cost of a kilowatt is a key because given the lack of centralized power generation in remote regions, the cost of electricity in the total cost of producing something can make up to 60% of products cost for high-end metal refining facilities such as aluminum or copper plant, for example. On the other hand, nuclear power would give the mining owner an opportunity to predict the price of electricity for decades ahead. Year 2021 has demonstrated the stability of nuclear power generation in the world of rapidly changing fuel prices. The share of fuel in cost of electricity reached 80% for fossil fuels, while it stands at 3% for uranium. Therefore, even if the price of uranium increases tremendously, what we will be very happy for us, for example, as Rosatom, the customer would barely notice the change in electricity cost. That is a very simple reasoning behind the decision of the Baimskaya zone owners to choose Rosatom's new floating NPPs. They needed electricity price predictability, and they got it. Our new floating nuclear power units are based on the new Rosatom Rhythm series SMR, our flagship SMR technology. It incorporates all the best features of its predecessors and most up-to-date innovations. This reactor uses time-proven pressurized water reactor technology. Its safety is unconditional and it's truly compact. Since Rhythm series SMRs are generally versatile reactor, today we work on both our new floating power units and our first land-based NPP. Let's take a closer look at such land-based NPP. This plant can produce up to 110 megawatt of electrical power if you combine it from 2 units. However, due to its modular nature, the capacity can be scaled up if needed. Ensuring uninterrupted energy supply for at least 60 years, this plant has a relatively short construction period. Since most of the components of the reactor are prefabricated, the power plant can be built in 3 or 4 years, an astonishing achievement for the world's nuclear industry. At this point, you probably ask yourself, if you offer new floating SMRs, where are your onshore SMRs for sale for the whole international market? The answer is very simple. You know, we have a rule in Rosatom. First, we build something in our country, a project at home, and only then we offer it to the market. But please do not worry. As I have already said, we are working on our first land-based nuclear power plant. And we are very proud to announce that the first of a kind land-based nuclear power plant equipped with written 200N SMR will be deployed in 2028 in the northern Russian region of Yakutia. This project is a perfect proof of my third point about SMRs. They truly shine when it comes to sustainability and eco-friendliness. Once again, let me prove my words with some fact. First, today, Yakutia is a region of Russia, faraway region, northern region, depends entirely on diesel and coal, which are a source of considerable amount of harmful emissions. The new SMR will contribute to the reduction of up to 20,000 tons of CO2 emissions per every year. This clean, low-carbon electricity will be used partially for the exploration of the local gold deposit. Clean electricity means clean, sustainable supply chain, just what is needed for the decarbonization goals and saving a unique local environment. Adding to this, the construction of the SMR and PP will grant the region energy independence because fuel delivery will only take place once in 5-6 years and will bring down the cost of electric power and heat significantly compared to current prices. As we calculated, it will make it maybe twice lower. Finally, up to 800 new jobs will be created at the time of NPP construction, which will help increase the quality of life of the local people. Due to this economic and environmental reason, the local government has already confirmed the offtake of up to 50 megawatt of electrical power from this nuclear power plant. So, as we witnessed, SMRs present an interesting energy option, and we have many interesting SMRs. I don't want to brag, but we probably have the largest portfolio of SMR concept and design, from barge-mounted to icebreaker to land-based. But it always, we never stop. We continue expanding our SMRs product line. Mr. Likhachev already mentioned it, that it's a very large scale of different type of reactors. We are currently working on the more powerful option of Rhythm series SMR ever. Rhythm 400 will be almost 2 times as power as a current Rhythm 200 reactor. We expect it will be commissioned in 2027 as our first ultra-large nuclear icebreaker. Obviously, the Rhythm series is not all we have. As part of the Rosatom efforts to move towards closed fuel cycle, we are developing so-called SVBR100 SMR reactor. This will be a generation 4 reactor based on heavy metal coolant with the electrical capacity of 100 megawatt. And while working with SMRs, we asked ourselves, if we are good at doing small, why do not do micro? Our micro reactor is called Shelf M. It has an electrical capacity of up to 10 megawatt, a long refuel cycle of 8 years, and design life for minimum 60 years with the opportunity for the extension. We already see great interest in this technology around the globe, and we expect this segment to grow rapidly in the coming years. Microreactors have a number of unique characteristics. They are fully factory built. They can be installed on site. They can be quickly shipped and removed from the site where there's no need anymore. They are so small that could be transported by a truck. I think that in the near future, microreactors could be deployed in remote areas to replace outdated diesel generators, but in the long term, they can be integrated with renewables in on-grid applications as well, and it will be very good and very effective eco-friendly combinations. Now let me say a few things to sum my speech up. We take SMR really seriously. It's not a hype for us, it's a reality. We have been in the field for a while. We are not doing it because it's fashionable. We have already successfully implemented some projects, and we are ready to bring the technology to the global energy market. Currently, we negotiate potential SMRs projects development with more than 10 countries, and some of them are present here today, and we are very thankful for it. And we see even more interest from a lot of countries. Today, you saw, I tried to demonstrate our latest products, which are designed to transform the global energy landscape, but many more disruptive technologies from us are yet to come. I invite you to follow Rosatom in this exciting journey towards a world with a clean and reliable energy sources. Thank you for your attention, everyone, and I hope I didn't bore you with too much technical details, but instead got you excited about our cool tech. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Komarov. I must confess that when I dared call myself a doctor, my PhD is in history, but I think these technical details are readily comprehensible for anyone. Now, we've heard the vendor, we've heard about the settings in Russia, but this is indeed a unique encounter today because we have both the vendor, the developer of the technology, but also representatives of potential customers, and of course, international organizations. And in that sense, I'm so glad that we have here today with us Sama Bilbao-Ilion, representing the World Nuclear Association. Here she comes. Shall we parallelize, Sama, shall we parallelize simultaneous translation here? Los dos somos hispanoparlantes, para tú el idioma castellano es tu materno, yo nací en La Baracúa, crecí en Montevideo, no necesitamos otros idiomas. I just said that for her, Spanish is maternal language, and I, in turn, was born in Havana, Cuba, and grew up in Montevideo, Uruguay. We could ruin this meeting by switching into our own language. The reason why I mention it is that, with all due respect to the Russian presentations here, now, I would actually be referring not only to the Russian Arctic, but to the developing world interests and needs, now that we talk about this. And from now on, I will quote, because last year at the World Nuclear Exhibition, you have said that nuclear energy offered a golden opportunity to create a cleaner and more equitable world. Now, do you think that small modular reactors, of which we've just heard, could actually change the environment completely and could mean that SMRs would sort of contribute to a totally different energy balance, if you wish?
Yeah, thank you, Sergey. It is such a pleasure to be here with all of you. No, I completely agree with you that we've heard from Mr. Likachev that the world completely changed in the last couple of years, and nuclear energy is finally recognized as a key component of this low-carbon energy mixture. However, I truly agree with you that small modular reactors have brought so much excitement, so much energy in the global energy debate, both internally within the nuclear community, but also externally. So I think that, for example, within the nuclear community, we have seen so much acceleration of innovative ideas that have crystallized in several of these small modular reactors. And I'm talking in the technology area, different coolants, different fuels, longer fuel cycles, and we just heard Mr. Komarov that mentioned some of those things, but completely different strategies to actually bring the energy. So that is very exciting. And then at a global level, we are seeing that the world has started to pay attention to nuclear energy more because these smaller reactors, they perhaps align better with these energy systems of the future that perhaps the traditional larger nuclear power plants. So I think that nuclear small modular reactors are great ambassadors of nuclear technologies at a global level. And you know, the other very important thing is that many countries, that some of them already are using nuclear energy, but countries that never had considered seriously nuclear energy because it just seemed like a big investment, big project, something that was not really within their possibilities. They are looking at small modular reactors as something that could be feasible for them. Why? Well, we just heard it is possible to install these reactors in remote places, in places that don't have a strong grid or access to the grid at all. They can produce not only electricity, which is obviously very important, but they can also produce heat, which is opening an enormous opportunity to decarbonize other sectors of the economy that are very difficult to decarbonize. So as we heard from Mr. Komarov, so we can use electricity and heat for industrial processes, to produce fresh water, to produce hydrogen that could be used to decarbonize the transportation and the shipping sectors. So these are enormous opportunities that they were possible with large reactors, but small modular reactors are crystallizing even more in the minds of all the policymakers. So that is from the technical point of view. But another thing that is very important is the business case point of view, because these projects are smaller, because they have a shorter construction time, because they really are going to be taking advantage of simplification, modular construction, and they are going to be really much smaller projects. They are going to be much more affordable. So countries that perhaps wouldn't face the possibility of having a very, very large nuclear power plant, suddenly they say, well, these smaller reactors are possible for us. We can manage the financial investment. And not only that, they are scalable. We can do maybe 50 megawatts in the next 5 years. If we need more, we can do 50 more in the next few years. So they are very scalable. So very exciting opportunities, and I really, really think that the idea of small modular reactors is enormously important to the overall framework that we are seeing in nuclear energy development at a global level.
Just a small follow-up. You've just mentioned SMRs as part of the hydrogen production chain as well. Yeah. You're serious about it? So yellow hydrogen produced by SMRs?
Absolutely, absolutely. So there is, as you know, and many of our audience know, there are many technical processes that can be used to produce hydrogen. Some of them rely on heat specifically. The most effective ones rely on heat, and currently hydrogen is being produced primarily via fossil fuels. So if we can use these small modular reactors with processes that are existing right now, this is not science fiction, these technologies that exist right now, using electricity and heat from nuclear reactors, small modular reactors, we can actually produce hydrogen very effectively, very cost effectively, and a very large scale. So this is, again, as you said, a very, very important piece of the puzzle as we are trying to decarbonize, but still making sure that everybody in the world does have access to abundant, clean, affordable energy.
Well, we'll talk more about it now that you're in the orbit of the Global Energy Association as well. Muchísimas gracias. Thank you so much indeed. Let us now to not switch sides, but switch to the other side of the story, which is about potential customers. And with us today, we have a representative of a relatively small country, which for decades now has relied on nuclear energy, even throughout the most difficult parts of its recent history, which were indeed during the last several decades. I'm, of course, referring to Armenia, where up to 35% of electricity is produced thanks to the existence of the nuclear power plant. So if we recalculate things, every third electricity bulb in Armenia is burned thanks to nuclear. So we have with us our friend from Armenia, поэтому попрошу поприветствовать нашего гостя из Армении, Эдуард Мартиросян, глава Минсоморской АЭС, который расскажет нам об успешном использовании атомной энергии в его стране.
Большое спасибо, Сергей Борисович. Здравствуйте, дорогие друзья и коллеги.
Hello, dear friends and colleagues.
Shortly in my speech, I think to stress the significance of atomic energy for all spheres of livelihood of Armenia. We cannot, I have to give you a history of development of this industry in our republic. It's been 55-year anniversary after the decision was made to construct atomic power plant, and 45 years ago we generated first kilowatt. We would like to note that establishment and development of atomic industry in Armenia initially was provided by the scientific and technical potential of Soviet Union. Initially, nuclear energy in Armenia was exotic because it was not necessary for the economy of the country. The access of energy was transferred to nearby countries. After the fall of the Soviet Union, and after the earthquake and after the Chernobyl accident led to shutdown of the power plant. And we practically refused to use atomic energy. In the beginning of 1990s, energy crisis and the collapse of the economy of the Republic called for a revision of this position, and the energy block of atomic power plant was became operational again. And the attitude of Armenian public towards atomic energy also changed, considering the specific geographical location and the fact that we do not have our own energy sources. The independence of our republic is provided for by using atomic energy. We started using energy block, and now this is a stable, sustainable source of energy. We needed significant investments in safety of atomic power plants. We have done more than 100 large and 1,000 small measures for $300 million US. Right now, the operational energy block of the Armenian atomic power plant is safer when it was shut down in 1990. We have many international organizations also approved the safety of Armenian nuclear power plants up to 2026. The existing limitation of thermal power was increased from 92 to 98% with support of specialized organizations which are the part of state corporation of Rosatom. Within the framework of the same program, there were modernized turbines and other structural elements of a nuclear power plant, which increased efficiency of our energy block. Due to our cooperation with the Russian state corporation of Rosatom, we increased electrical power plant by 15% up to 400 megawatts and the increased safety of nuclear power plants. Strategic development program of energy sector up to 2040 includes construction of new nuclear power plants when the resource of existing power plant is gonna end its life. The program includes construction and commissioning new power plants. Armenia is one of the 31 countries that using nuclear power plant energy. Therefore, we are an equal partner in the international community. Armenia has formed a very serious scientific potential, and we are using up-to-date technologies. in close cooperation with international organizations. We develop national professionals. Armenian nuclear power plant is one of the most important strategical objects that provides for independence of energy security and independence of the country. Thanks to minimal cost of energy generating by nuclear power plant. This also creates employment opportunities. Overall, we can talk about 10,000 employment places that were created due to use of atomic energy and due to the fact that city Metsamor, where this power plant was constructed around the nuclear power plant. I would like, as the conclusion, to note once again that thanks to failure-free work of a nuclear power plant, it is an integral part of the livelihood and of economy of the country. Thank you for your attention.
Тем, кто не бывал в Армении, хочу сказать, что, конечно,
Those that have never been to Armenia, I have to tell you, one of the best views in the world from Yerevan is towards the mountain of Ararat, but it's also very nice when it's lit up, so Ararat and the nuclear power plant light up each other.
I am honestly afraid of presenting the next country, because every single time I pronounce the name of it, Kyrgyz Republic, I always remember that every single time I come back from there, I gain a couple of kilos because their hospitality is certainly accompanied by specific cuisine, very tasty. However, we are talking about this country, which is a peculiar country. If you look at its development rates before the pandemic, it was growing by 4%. Its population was growing by 2%. It's a proud member of the Eurasian Economic Union these days. But traditionally, its energy balance has been based on the hydroelectricity, up to 80%. Yet today, given the circumstances of which our next speaker will be talking to us, it's actually looking at SMRs too. Сегодня с нами Тилека Айталиев, заместитель министра энергетики Кыргызстана. Прошу подняться вас на сцену. А вопрос у меня к вам простой. А что это вы вдруг действительно с таким энергобалансом, с такими-то реками начали тоже присматриваться к АСММ?
Прежде всего, разрешите поприветствовать, уважаемые коллеги. Хочется выразить слова благодарности за то, что организовали такую площадку, где у нас имеется возможность выразить свое мнение, поделиться своими планами, соответственно, самое немаловажное, то, что у нас появляется возможность
that we now have the opportunity to learn, share experience. Answering your question, I can say that first and foremost, the most important thing today on the agenda of the energy guys is ensuring stable generation. Stable generation as far as capacity is concerned 24/7. And based on this, our energy balance is dominated by the electricity produced by hydropower plants. However, in the era when the entire world is moving towards green energy, ensuring renewable sources of energy is of great importance. And the most pressing issue is the issue of traditional energy. And this is where our response to your question lies, ensuring stable, traditional, uninterrupted power supply that will be aimed at ensuring energy security of the country first and foremost. And this leads us to the next question that touches upon the issues of economics in the area of energy. There is a need to do the calculations that will give us the opportunity to define our strategy for several years or decades by defining the prime costs of the electricity that we generate, taking into account the fact that the energy demand is absolute. That means that it's growing beyond any limits and boundaries, and our livelihoods as such, the livelihood of the country, the livelihood of the people living in the country is linked ever more to the consumption of power. And due to this, we define the strategy and we define the policies for the development of the energy sector. And this is why the Kyrgyz Republic and the energy professionals of the Kyrgyz Republic see that one of the separate sources of stable energy could be the construction of such nuclear power plants, first and foremost, small nuclear power plants. And maybe then we will be able to take it even further. What else would I like to add? I would like to add that the sources of energy, no matter what they are necessary to ensure livelihoods. That means that we can all see that every source of energy has its own vulnerabilities. In other words, hydropower plants, we all understand that this is clean energy, but at the same time, we will depend on certain indicators such as water inflow, the cyclicity of water inflows, etc. Another important factor in the development of the energy sector by introducing renewable sources of energy such as solar and wind power. Well, yes, those are also necessary, very important, because that's also an additional source of generation. But then the biggest question is capacity regulation and hydropower plants and nuclear power plants. By the way, we are very hopeful. So that will make it possible for us to regulate capacity, and this will allow us to avoid blackouts during peak hours. In other words, in simple terms, there's a principle that you really, when you need something, you need it when you need it, right? That means that we need a source of uninterrupted energy, and we don't want to have problems in the peak hours. We need to find solutions to that somehow. In the conditions of our republic, currently, the development of the energy sector and the growth of power consumption, taking into account the fact that the Kyrgyz Republic is a developing country, we have major objectives. We have ambitious objectives to provide energy to the sectors of the economy and to the population. We need uninterrupted power supply. So once again, I would like to thank my colleagues from Rosatom Corporation. I would like to thank the head of this corporation, Alexei Yevgenyevich. I would like to thank your team for this work, for the effort, for the well-coordinated work. And indeed, the most difficult part of any work is organizing this work. Therefore, I'd like to wish you success. We, the Kyrgyz Republic and the Russian Federation, are partners, we're allies, and the further strengthening of our business relations will unfold the essence of the word union. And this is why I'm more than confident that the history that we have in common and the future that we will build together will be successful, stable, and most importantly, it will create favorable conditions for our compatriots. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, I'm ready to take them. I have a suggestion. Last year, we, Global Energy, jointly with the Eurasian Development Bank, issued the first report about the energy development pathways in Central Asia. The authors are quite international, but I realized that the report was incomplete. For the next edition, I think we should also add nuclear to it, okay? It's time. The time has come. Now I understand that the time has come. Thank you very much.
история ходит по кругу, и буквально в августе прошлого
History
года,
repeats
когда я
itself.
вел
And in August last
Восточно-экономический
year,
форум в
when I
Владивостоке, где были
hosted
президенты
the
России, Казахстана и
Eastern
Монголии, мы говорили об
Economic
этом
Forum
проекте, о том,
in
который сейчас у
Vladivostok,
нас
where
будет
we have
представлен, о
presidents of Russia,
котором Кирилл
Kazakhstan, and
Комаров уже
Mongolia. We
говорил.
spoke about this project that
Это
Kirill
действительно
Komarov
развитие
referred
совершенно
to. That's the
уникальных
development of
месторождений на крайнем
unique
севере
deposits
России,
in
которые
the north
висели
of Russia.
десятилетиями.
They've
Они
been
были
out
разведаны
there
в
for
70-е годы,
decades.
а
They
разработать
were
их, в
discovered
общем-то,
back in
можно, по большому счету,
1970s, and
только
you can
сейчас.
only develop
Да,
them
сейчас
now.
будет Сергей Рыжов,
In
я, собственно,
reality, we
приглашаю
have
его
Sergei
на
Ryzhov
сцену.
now. I would
Сергей
like to
Рыжов,
invite
который
him to the
представляет
stage.
компанию
Sergei Ryzhov
Селигдар,
represents
является
Селигдар
председателем
company. He is the
директоров. Это та
chairman of
самая
the board of
компания,
directors. This is
которая будет
the
работать на
company
севере
that will work
Якутии,
in the north of
и
Yakutia.
которая решила
And
из
this is
всего
the
имеющегося
company
выбрать
that
технологию
decided to
АЭС.
select the SMRs, the small nuclear power plants. Well, you know, Power Селигдар is the company that will be using 2 small nuclear power plants for the purposes of its long-term power supply. The SNPP in the north of Yakutia and the operational floating academic Lomonosov NPP in Chukotka. There is no other company like this in the world. So a few words about us. We produce tin and gold in the far east of Russia, and we are developing actively. We have 2 new and major development projects. They are located close to the Arctic Ocean, and there are no roads there. The closest road and the closest power line of the Uniform Russia power system is located at more than 1,000 kilometers away from us, from each of these fields. And currently, what are the advantages of small nuclear power plants that we see as a consumer? The first and probably the most important thing is sustainable power supply. Small nuclear power plants, in contrast to the big reactors, can work in load follow mode. This is why they're very flexible, and the quality of electricity is very high. And this term quality of electricity is the one that our specialists are using, specialists that ensure sustainable work of complicated enrichment equipment that requires this quality. The second thing is economics. The cost of power produced at the small nuclear power plants is competitive compared to other energy solutions in the Russian north, including diesel generation that is widespread, and also compared to wind generation and coal-fired generation. Third, yet again, another economic factor, small nuclear power plants mean predictability of tariffs for many years to come, for the entire period of development of the field, which is measured in decades. This is brought about by the low fuel cost component, and what's important for us, the subsurface users at the stage of engineering of the fields and at the level of operational activities. The fourth factor, which is just as important as the others, is the carbon footprint and other aspects of sustainable development. Throughout the life cycle of nuclear generation, it has the smallest carbon footprint compared to all other sources of power. And for us, it's not just a solution to the problem of power supply. For us, this also means the lack of pollution in the Arctic and the north of Russia. It is also very important for our consumers, because our consumers will understand that they're buying green products from us. Fifth, the depth of raw material processing. Traditionally, up in the north, companies process ore, they produce concentrates, and then they take them to other regions of the country. But with this source of energy, small nuclear power plant, even now we're engineering a full production cycle. We are saying no to expensive transportation, and in doing this, we reduce the production cycle, its duration. We reduce our transportation costs. We increase our productivity, and we produce green products. Number 6, infrastructure. Around the small nuclear power plants, and that goes without saying, new facilities will be erected. All sorts of and all the opportunities provided by the regions will be taken advantage of. And this program for comprehensive territorial development, taking into account the construction of the SNPP, is already being developed with our participation by the government of Yakutia. Number 7, opportunity for scaling up. With increased demand that may emerge both from us and from the other enterprises on the territory. So it is possible to increase the capacity by commissioning new reactors. In other words, I believe that the small nuclear power plants are the optimal energy solution for such remote territories as the north of Yakutia and Chukotka. Rosatom has rich experience of engineering, construction, and operation of small reactors. 6 reactors have already been built, and they are the ones that will be used for the small nuclear power plant in Yakutia. To sum up, I can say that for us, this small nuclear power plant is one of the components of the implementation of the development strategy of PAO Selegdar for the next decades. I have 2 sub-questions. Can you remind us, you have a very interesting story, right? Well, the Arctic Ocean still freezes over, right? And you're building some sort of a road, right? Somewhere to the side to deliver your products faster. Well, within the framework of the program for comprehensive development of Yakutia, it is planned to engineer and construct a road. And this is also a factor. Well, this project, this idea, and the start of the engineering was actually provoked and triggered by the small nuclear power plant. So around the power plant, around the road, new industries will emerge, new towns, new cities. That all means comprehensive development. What am I driving at? Even those that are present here today represent rich countries, Europe, for instance, and when they come to the Emirates, they are completely astonished. They're completely astonished because all the roads are illuminated. So that means that you will have this illuminated thread from Yakutia to the shoreline of the ocean. Well, we're not thinking about an illuminated road yet. Okay, but you see, it's amazing how the SNPPs change things around them. Thank you very much indeed.
Now, we're just back, so to say, from Yakutia, but now we will go even further, given the geographical distances, further from the frontage, if you so wish. We're going to an archipelago in Asia-Pacific, which is, of course, the Philippines, one of the biggest archipelagos in the world. I think we're talking about 7,100 islands, which comprise that archipelago. And this is, of course, the country where its president has expressed interest in SMRs. I should have said that, of course, that country represents up to 1/3 of the ASEAN population, one of the fastest growing. And from here on, I will have to quote things because, well, it's always risky to get confused with some of the government regulations references. Now, in July 2020, President Duterte gave a green light to pursue the development of civilian nuclear energy for power generation through issuance of executive order, and from here I should order, EO 116, which includes creation of the Nuclear Energy Program Interagency Committee and directing a study for the adaptation of a national position on nuclear energy program. Now, we have asked Alfonso Guzzi, Secretary of the Department of Energy of the Republic of the Philippines, to answer our question. This is going to be a pre-recorded address, but they answered the question why the Philippines are actually interested in the Rosatom, Russia's SMR technology. Let's now listen and watch what he had to say.
To all participants, Assalamu alaikum. I greet you all a pleasant afternoon. Let me congratulate Rosatom for a successful hosting of the World SMR Day. One of the recent significant developments in the nuclear industry is the small modular reaction technology, or SMR. It is a game changer in the global nuclear energy landscape. A SMR can be built in location not traditionally suitable for large NPPs, and interestingly, it can be built or installed close to power-intensive industries or remote communities. It can be easily integrated in existing electrical grids. A SMR is an attractive, viable, and doable option for the Philippines. It provides a non-intermittent power supply to calamity-prone countries, a low carbon footprint, and a predictable supply cost. It is tailored fit to the Philippine archipelagic setting. The Philippines is composed of thousands of islands, with the three, Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao, interconnected in one grid. The rest of the islands, except for some, one standalone. Rosatom, which has been in the nuclear industry for 75 years, is among the nuclear technology providers in the world that are known for its safe, proven, and state-of-the-art technology. In 2017, we visited the Baltic Shipyard Company in St. Petersburg, Russia, and witnessed the ongoing assembly and processing of the academic Lomonosov floating nuclear power plant. We understand that this has been commissioned and is now operational. During that visit, I expressed to Rosatom our interest on having one like academic in the Philippines. We have previously signed a memorandum of intent with Rosatom Overseas in 2019 for the purpose of elaboration of feasibility studies on the construction in the Philippines of a small reactor technology nuclear power plants onshore or offshore. In this light, we have agreed on an action plan. As you are all aware, the Philippines has embarked on a program to include nuclear energy in its energy mix. With the guidance of International Atomic Energy Agency, or IAEA, the country has completed its integrated nuclear infrastructure review and the corresponding integrated work plan. The DOE Nuclear Energy Program Implementing Organization, or NEPU, and the government's Nuclear Energy Program Interagency Committee, chaired by the DOE, submitted to the President of the Philippines a proposed presidential issuance to adopt a position to include nuclear energy in our energy mix. Rosatom has been supportive of the Philippines' nuclear energy program. May I convey our thanks and appreciation to Rosatom's continuing guidance and support. I hope to see you soon in the Philippines. Mabuhay and Assalamu alaikum.
Alfonso Cusian should have said, of course, from the start that DOE in Philippines terms stands for Department of Energy. I should also have said that I have a unique experience as far as this country is concerned. I first came here in 1995, and despite me traveling all the time, I had not been back to the Emirates till November last year. So you can't imagine my surprise when I saw what this country has achieved, including those roads with lampposts. But as far as today's presentation is concerned, I say that these SMRs actually ought to change the world. Be it roads lighten up in the depths of Yakutia, which doesn't matter really, be it other projects, things are amazing. Now, I will now disappear shortly from your horizon because I'll now give floor to something very practical. I've moderated quite a lot of sessions like this, but typically nothing happens really beyond us organizing a little get-together and listening to each other. Very rarely we have a series of events where people actually sign things as a result of such sessions. As far as I'm informed, there will be a series of signing things now, so well, as they say in Rosatom, walk the walk and talk the talk. So I'll disappear now and give floor to the people who will be signing bilateral agreements. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Уважаемые дамы и господа, начинается церемония подписания. Dear ladies and gentlemen, may we have your attention, please, for the signing ceremony. Для участия в церемонии на подиум приглашаются Алексей Евгеньевич Лихачев, Абдилатиф Кудайкулович Жумабаев, Тилек Анаркулович Айталиев. May we kindly ask the following participants to take their places on the podium: Mr. Alexei Likhachev, Mr. Abdilatif Zhumabayev, Mr. Tilek Айталиев. Документ к подписанию. Меморандум о взаимопонимании между Государственной корпорацией по атомной энергии «Росатом» и Министерством энергетики Киргизской Республики о сотрудничестве в сооружении атомных станций малой мощности. The document to be signed is the Memorandum of Understanding between State Atomic Energy Corporation, Rosatom, and the Ministry of Energy of the Kyrgyz Republic on cooperation in small modular reactors construction. Со стороны Министерства энергетики Киргизской Республики меморандум был подписан министром энергетики Даскулом Джумагуловичем Бекмурзаевым. On behalf of the Ministry of Energy of the Kyrgyz Republic, the memorandum was signed by the Minister of Energy, Mr. Doskul Бекмурзаев. Со стороны госкорпорации «Росатом» меморандум подписывает генеральный директор госкорпорации Алексей Евгеньевич Лихачев. On behalf of State Corporation Rosatom, the memorandum shall be signed by Rosatom Director General, Mr. Alexei Likhachev. Меморандум подписывается в присутствии чрезвычайного и полномочного посла Киргизской Республики в Объединенных Арабских Эмиратах Абдилатифа Кудайкуловича Жумабаева и заместителя министра энергетики Киргизской Республики Тилека Анаркуловича Айталиева. The signing ceremony is witnessed by His Excellency Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary of the Kyrgyz Republic to the United Arab Emirates, Mr. Abdulatif Zhumabayev, and Deputy Minister of Energy of the Kyrgyz Republic, Mr. Tilek Айталиев. Поздравляем с подписанием меморандума. Congratulations on signing the memorandum. Благодарим участников церемонии и просим занять места в зале. Просьба Алексея Евгеньевича Лихачева остаться на сцене. We thank the participants and invite them to take their seats. Продолжаем церемонию подписания. The signing ceremony shall continue. Для участия в церемонии на подиум приглашаются Гнел Гензелович Санасян, Эдуард Ашотович Мартиросян и Евгений Маркович Pakirmanov. May we kindly ask the following participants to take their places on the podium: Mr. Gnel Sanasyan, Mr. Eduard Martirosyan, and Mr. Evgeny Pakirmanov. Подписывается меморандум о взаимопонимании для проработки возможного сотрудничества по сооружению новых атомных энергоблоков российского дизайна на территории Республики Армения между закрытым акционерным обществом «Армянская атомная электростанция» и акционерным обществом «Rosatom Overseas». Memorandum of Understanding for the elaboration of the eventual cooperation in the construction of new nuclear power units of Russian design on the territory of the Republic of Armenia between Armenian nuclear power plant and Rosatom Overseas shall be signed. Со стороны Rosatom Overseas меморандум подписывает президент Rosatom Overseas Евгений Маркович Пакерманов. Со стороны Армянской АЭС меморандум подписывает генеральный директор Армянской АЭС Эдуард Ашотович Мартиросян. On behalf of the Armenian nuclear power plant, the memorandum is being signed by the director of the Armenian nuclear power plant, Mr. Eduard Martirosyan. On behalf of Rosatom Overseas, the memorandum is being signed by the president of Rosatom Overseas, Mr. Евгений Пакерманов. Меморандум подписывается в присутствии генерального директора госкорпорации «Росатом» Алексея Евгеньевича Лихачева и министра территориального управления и инфраструктур Армении Гнела Гензеловича Санасяна. The signing ceremony is witnessed by the Minister of Territorial and Infrastructural Management, Mr. Gnel Sanasyan, and the Director General of State Atomic Energy Corporation Rosatom, Mr. Alexei Likhachev. Поздравляем с подписанием меморандума. Congratulations on signing the memorandum. Благодарим участников церемонии, просим занять места в зале. Просьба Алексея Евгеньевича Лихачева и Евгения Марковича Пакерманова остаться на сцене. We thank the participants and invite them to take their seats. We kindly ask Mr. Alexei Likhachev and Mr. Evgeny Pakirmanov to stay on the podium. Продолжаем церемонию подписания. The signing ceremony shall continue. Для участия в церемонии на подиум приглашается Сергей Владимирович Рыжов. May we kindly ask Mr. Sergei Ryzhov to take his place on the podium. Подписывается соглашение между акционерным обществом Rosatom Overseas и публичным акционерным обществом Seligdar о поставке и потреблении энергии атомной станции малой мощности для разработки месторождения полезных ископаемых Kuchus. The agreement between Rosatom Overseas and Seligdar Public Joint Stock Company on the supply and consumption of energy from a small modular reactor plant for the development of the Kuchus mineral deposits shall be signed. Со стороны акционерного общества Rosatom Overseas соглашение подписывает президент Rosatom Overseas Евгений Маркович Пакерманов. Со стороны публичного акционерного общества Seligdar соглашение подписывает председатель Совета директоров ПАО Seligdar Сергей Владимирович Рыжов. On behalf of Seligdar Public Joint Stock Company, the agreement is being signed by the chairman of the board of directors of Seligdar, Mr. Sergei Ryzhov. On behalf of Rosatom Overseas, the agreement is being signed by the president of Rosatom Overseas, Mr. Evgeny Pakirmanov. Соглашение подписывается в присутствии генерального директора госкорпорации «Росатом» Алексея Евгеньевича Лихачева. The signing ceremony is witnessed by Director General of State Atomic Energy Corporation Rosatom, Mr. Alexei Likhachev. Поздравляем с подписанием соглашения. Congratulations on signing the agreement. Благодарим участников церемонии, просим занять места в зале. We thank the participants and invite them to take their seats. Просьба Алексея Евгеньевича Лихачева остаться на сцене. We thank the participants and invite them to take their seats. We kindly ask Mr. Alexei Likhachev to stay on the podium. Продолжаем церемонию подписания в онлайн-формате. The signing ceremony via video conference connection shall continue. Для участия в церемонии на подиум приглашается Антон Валерьевич Москвин. May we kindly ask Mr. Anton Moskvin to take his place on the podium. Подписывается совместный план действий и техническое задание на проведение предварительного технико-экономического обоснования реализации проекта АСММ на территории Филиппин между Rosatom Overseas и Министерством энергетики Республики Филиппины. The joint action plan and the terms of reference on the elaboration of the pre-feasibility study on the construction in the Philippines of nuclear power plants based on small modular reactor technology between Rosatom Overseas and the Department of Energy of the Republic of the Philippines shall be signed. Со стороны Министерства энергетики Республики Филиппин по видеоконференц-связи к нам присоединяется советник министра энергетики Филиппин, председатель компании EXPO господин Херардо Эргуиза для подписания документов. Со стороны Rosatom Overseas документы подписывает вице-президент по маркетингу и развитию бизнеса Rosatom Overseas Антон Валерьевич Москвин. On behalf of the Department of Energy of the Republic of the Philippines, we are now joined via video conference connection by the Assistant Secretary of the Department of Energy of the Republic of the Philippines and Chairman of EXPO, Mr. Gerardo Derguiza, for signing the documents. On behalf of Rosatom Overseas, the documents are being signed by Vice President for Marketing and Business Development, Mr. Anton Moskvin. Церемония подписания проходит в присутствии генерального директора госкорпорации «Росатом» Алексея Евгеньевича Лихачева. Поздравляем с подписанием совместного плана действий и технического задания. Congratulations on signing the joint action plan and the terms of reference. Благодарим участников церемонии. We thank the participants for taking part in the ceremony. На этом церемония подписания подошла к концу. Большое спасибо за внимание. The signing ceremony has come to an end. Thank you so much for your attention. I'm pleased to pass the floor over to Mr. Sergei Brylov.
Ladies and gentlemen, actually to put things short, thank you so much indeed for your participation. May I use this opportunity as President of the Global Energy Association, of which Rosatom is now a partner, to remind you that today, 20th of January, which means that we're just a couple of months away from the final of the current nomination process for Global Energy Prize, which ends on the 20th of March. So please remind your fellow scientists in your country that there is this prize for the base in Moscow, Russia, $500,000, 3 nominations, conventional energy, non-conventional energy, and new applications. And I would particularly stress the importance of today's events. Yes, it's true that some of the new technologies may be invented elsewhere, Rosatom in particular, but they may be applied in your countries. So we are very eager to see scientists from your countries cooperating with Rosatom and postulating for our prize. What have I forgotten? Of course I have forgotten the most important thing. The buffet and networking is expecting us. So thank you and see you outside.